Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. You just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
That's right, Kevin O'Connell. Away we go. This is a very special show because if you're watching this and you're like, hold on a second, it ain't Thorsday. Well, you know how back in my day, Monday Night Football occasionally would show a Thursday game, and they would say it's Monday Night Football on a Thursday. Well, this is Thorsday on a Saturday. It's Judd, it's Declan, and then, of course, our good friend sporting his Vikings gear, Thor Nystrom of Fantasy Life, college and football draft analyst, does a great job, a man of many hats, a man of many talents, including a man who's had his own day named after him, which Victor the Viking has endorsed. How are you doing a couple of days after the Vikings' second consecutive defeat, Thorsky?
I'm still not over it. I'm still not over it. I've been better, but yeah, the way that game ended and the way that it was officiated throughout, and certainly we can talk about some things on the Vikings end too, but you never want to lose that way.
Yeah, I mean, Thor. I mean, preparation-wise, like losing to the Lions is not like a shock to me. That is the best team in the NFC, but it just felt preparation that they just weren't ready for the Rams. And look, getting Nakua back is huge. I know you were a big Puka Nakua guy going into the draft last year, and he was obviously the rookie of the year, but it's just preparation. I just didn't think the Vikings were ready, and I think that's what I'm most frustrated by. It's the way they lost and how undisciplined they lost it.
Yeah, when I got, we all got the news, was a couple hours before the game that Puka was going to be activated, and TJ Hawkinson was not. I was talking to a buddy on the phone, and I was like, especially the activation of Puka. And it turned out, what was even the question there? I mean, he looked 110%. And the reason I was concerned is you go to the Lions game where they just feasted on the Vikings over the intermediate area with the quick hitters. And Puka is one of the best in the game at that. And obviously the constitution of the Rams offense, it's a lot of those timing type passes. Stafford's really, really good at that. With Puka playing, you could project that they would pick on the same weakness of the Vikings defense if the Vikings did not make an adjustment. And the Vikings really didn't make an adjustment. And beyond that, the bizarre thing was the pass rush, which was dominant in September, has totally vanished. And against the Lions, it's one thing. You're playing probably the best offensive line in the NFL. In this game, the Rams do not have a good offensive line. If you were to stack them, they'd be like 25th in the NFL, like qualitatively. If you were doing like schoolyard pick, they do have my boy Bo Limmer starting at center as a rookie, but you have the former UDFA, Alaric Jackson, a tackle. You could go down the line. To not be able to get any pressure on that line, even when you were sending the heat, you throw your hands up. Pretty stunning when you consider that the work in the first month. And Grenard was the only guy that was doing anything there. So we got a few different things to button up. But I will say the Rams, as far as a team that's around 500, that's about as bad of a matchup as you can get for the Vikings because of their ability to do that quick timing stuff. And in sort of those vacated areas in the Flores defense, and credit to them, they took advantage of that.
So they did, and here's what I don't get though. So Ben Johnson, the Detroit OC, is really, really good, and he definitely figured some things out. And I mean, this is what happens. These guys do nothing but watch film. So like, it's not like it's not like the Bears in 885, the 46 defense. No one can figure it out for an entire season. These guys, this is what they're addicted to, okay? So Ben Johnson, kudos, does a great job. Lions are really good. Goff, who did get sacked 4 times, has a great day. But then you knew that McVay was going to watch that and say, okay, if I get Puka Nakua back, I'm going to do the exact same thing. And you said this. This is what I don't understand. Did Flores not anticipate that? And I know that Blake Cashman being out is significant, but was there nothing you could do to button that up? And where did the pressure go? And then what I'd like to get to eventually is, are you telling me you can't find a role for Dallas Turner beyond 3 snaps? So, like, I guess I have some questions about the schematics of what Flores did or did not do based on the knowledge that you knew McVay was going to go to school off what the Lions did.
Yeah, that's right. And with only the one guy who is doing anything in the pass rush, again, that's a bit troubling when what we know of the Flores defense, he is aiding that with the blitz machinations and the different things that he does schematically. And this game, you had a one-man show there, 0 sacks on Matthew Stafford. He was only touched 2 times, according to PFF, in that entire game. He had clean pockets throughout. Like, again, like stunning, in comparison to that first month of the season. Stafford always had that halo around him. And, they're not, it's not a bombs away offense downfield. He didn't need that clean pocket for longer than 2.5 seconds. That was sufficient. That's what he got all game long. And you end up carving the Vikings up like that. Certainly things that they have to shore up schematically. I put this take out on Twitter last night. I'll repeat it here. I do not think the Vikings should be buyers at the trade deadline. You already have less of a pick allotment. Right now, you only have your 1st and 2 5ths. You're going to get awarded a 3rd-round comp pick a couple months before the draft. The things that we've seen the last 2 weeks and the way that you can exploit that defense, and it's not just going to be Flores's mad genius thing that is going to carry the day all the way through February. You're more than one piece away, in my opinion. And we talked about this a million different times. This was always going to be the reset year. And going forward, you would set everything so well with the cap. And you had retained your 1st-round pick. A lot of people wanted to trade that last spring. You have everything in front of you. That's what I think, as far as the front office, the way that I would look at that. As opposed to bringing in reinforcement. But yeah, going back to the pass rush and Dallas Turner, it's a little bit troubling. I got some questions about that last night on Twitter. I was like, we'll discuss that on this show. Someone asked me if I was already seeing Louis Cine type sort of deal there. No, I'm not. No, we're not at the Louis Cine territory, but it is troubling nonetheless. Now, just to give people context out there, if you didn't watch our shows in the spring, everybody knows I was higher on JJ McCarthy than anyone outside of JJ McCarthy's family, and perhaps it turns out Kevin O'Connell. I was one of the lowest people in the industry on Dallas Turner. So to go the other way with that. Now, I didn't rank him crazy low, but I had him as the 3rd edge rusher, and I think I had him 20th overall or something like that. And my whole thing with his game, there was at the time leading up to the draft, most people had Dallas Turner as the clear edge 1 in that class. My sort of argument against that was the rawness of Dallas Turner, and his best thing in college, it was coming downhill and attacking. He has all the measurables. He has the long arms. He's an athletic freak. He has the pedigree. He was coached by Alabama, Nick Saban, and the awesome defensive staff they have there. So I got all that. I got the fit in Flores' system. I understood all that sort of stuff. However, at the time, when we were going to the draft, this is a guy who is 21 years old, who the by far the best aspect of his game, it's the pass rush thing. And in the pass rush, I did not see a refined pass rusher. In like we saw with the Colts with Latu. That guy has pass rush moves for days. He's a jukebox. You turn down one, he's going to flip to the next one, till the whistle blows. He'll just keep going. He'll play all the hits on one play if he has to. Whereas Dallas Turner, too often in the SEC, I saw him essentially, he's got a 98 mile per hour fastball. And I saw him too often trying to throw that, which was blow past you with the first step and then the acceleration and sort of run the wide route around the offensive tackle and try to beat him with speed and athleticism too often. I didn't see him setting a hard enough edge often enough. So there was rawness in his game and things that you had to develop both from a technical aspect and then also just yeah, I suppose mostly the technical aspect. Experiential was the other thing I was going to mention. The experiential thing he'll get. I don't know this year how much that's going to be. Obviously, the playing time has started to dissipate, and where it is concerning. I thought in the first year he would be a situational pass rusher. I didn't see a circumstance where if you invest that, he's not going to be that. For him not to even be that, what did he play last night? 3 defensive snaps?
Yeah.
And he also had the cameo with the holding on the punt. Like, that was his game. He did have the one good play where he like leaped up like Frogger to, I think he deflected that pass on the side. But again, not to see the field when all these other guys, Khalil Gregor, King of the Hill, Jalen Redmond, the Taki guy, all those guys are getting way more snaps than you. It is a little bit concerning. The Vikings do have the 2 veteran edges. Obviously, they prefer Patrick Jones to Dallas Turner at this time. But yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't say this is a little bit troubling because that guy at least should be able to rush the passer. The rest of the stuff you teach him as we go. The fact that you can't bring him on the field situationally at this point, it raised a little bit of a red flag for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to ask Thor is you kind of hinted on what he did well in college and where can that translate into the NFL? Because just because you're really good at something in college does not mean you're going to be really good at it in the NFL. We've known that forever with a bunch of different type of prospects, whether you're a first-round pick or a UDFA. But, I mean, is the path for him to get playing time to basically, like, be a part-time pass rusher at this point? I mean, Daniil Hunter was a part-time player to start. He never started with the Vikings, and he just matures into this absurd guy that can just get after the quarterback that was a freak raw athlete. I know Daniil and Dallas Turner's profiles coming out were probably a lot different, but is the best chance for Dallas Turner to get playing time is probably being like a situational pass rusher to your point, maybe subs in for Pat Jones, who, by the way, like, hasn't been that effective after a nice hot start in the first 2 games of the season. Like, it just feels like that might be the only path for him to at least get into some good graces where he can earn more playing snaps.
I think there's merit to the comparison between Hunter and Turner. On the surface, no, it wouldn't appear that way because Dallas Turner had the havoc stats out of Alabama on good teams. And the issue with Hunter's evaluation was he didn't have any sacks at LSU. And so it became a thing of he had the pressure rate, he had all the measurables, the sacks weren't, he wasn't getting the sacks. And so it was perceived as taking a chance on him. But in the same way, you had all the measurables there, you saw the flashes, you had to develop that player. And that's, obviously the same thing with Dallas Turner. And he was probably, I think, misunderstood as a draft prospect by the public. He probably always should have been seen as a guy who is certainly rawer than the other 2 edges that went in the first round. Latu was a guy who had been in college for, I believe, 5 years. And the same thing with Jared Verse, and had been at multiple different schools and, had been the guy on their defenses and had created enormous amounts of havoc on the big stage. And Dallas Turner, he was a part of a really good defense. But again, the situational stuff, he was good at the pass rush. He was good at creating some havoc. Wasn't quite as good in coverage and again, setting the edge. And these are things that he needs to work on. And so hopefully that's going on in practice. But again, a little bit of a troubling sign that playing time, it keeps ticking down. And we don't really have more snaps for it to tick down before it's 0 snaps in a game.
All right. I got one more question about Turner, but before I give you that question, Thor, I want to tell you about Spidix Pest Control, because I'm going to tell you right now, if you have rodents, I have a mouse problem in the house. Look, it's an old house. I get it. It's not embarrassing. It just is what it is. But you know what? Spidix Pest Control, they have done a fantastic job. They've been out to my house twice now to fix the problem. And I can't tell you the great job that they have done because it has been fantastic. They've sealed up a bunch of things where mice come in. And they also told me these mice were scouting my house like in September to move in for the winter. Those rascally mice, they're trying to set up shop in my house. So if you've got spiders, if you've got mice, anything that might be disturbing you inside or outside your house, Spidix Pest Control, they're going to do a great job in taking care of it. Offer right now for Score North and Purple Daily listeners and viewers, $125 off your first service by calling 952-333-8813 or check them out at Spidix.com. That's SPIDEXX, 2 X's, They also service outside of the metro here, so don't despair. Check their site. There's a very good chance that if you have a rodent problem, Spidix Pest Control, no matter where you are, can help you out. That's Spidix.com. All right, my last Turner question, Thor, is this then. Because you clearly, are incredibly prepared for the draft, so you had an idea, as you've talked about him. So when you look at the edges or the pass rushers who have been taken, did the Vikings, in your opinion, make a flat-out mistake? Or because I think we all can say, no matter what the team says, right? This was not the year. Like you were developing players. You are clearly... Did they make a mistake on the pick, or did they take a more raw player because they never really, truly, probably expected to be 5-0, or even at this point, 5-2?
I think it's too early to say it's a mistake. Again, a player who is 21 years old has the measurables. We've seen, the playoff semifinal game against JJ McCarthy in Michigan. He had some flash plays in that. I think it's a little bit too early for that. The Vikings have the veteran room at the edge. That being said, obviously with the caveat, I do think it's a bit troubling. You can't get on the field in the pass rushing thing, but I'm not ready to say that it was a mistake quite yet. But the thing that I said, with you guys the day after round one on the Friday show that we had done before round, day 2 of that draft, is I wouldn't have personally done that, even like what they did, even though I understood it. Right. I love the McCarthy thing. I thought they got him at a discount. Turner, they took him above, a little bit above, I think, where I had him on my board, with the trade up. And I just preferred the other two guys. They were way safer, and you saw the fully rounded games, especially, Verse was a guy who defended the run really well, in addition to the havoc he created as a pass rusher in college. Because, again, I saw what they saw as far as the ceiling goes, but it was going to take time to get there. But I get it. And I think the jury has to be out on that. But yeah, I mean, it's the threat assessment level of the alarm there. It is starting to rise like a thermometer a little bit. But yeah, week by week, it's going up a bit for sure.
DEFCON what? Right now. So 5 is the worst. Is that right? Nope. 1 is the worst. 5 is the best. Where are we? 1 to 5, DEFCON.
I would say
3 to 4.
I was going to say 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not no concern, because he should be a situational
but we're not at war.
Nothing else. No, it's not. I mean, like with Louis seeing, we knew pretty early, right? In the second year, it didn't take too long, and it was like, oh boy, this appears to be a bust. We can't get there yet with Turner. Still needs work. He's still very young, but yeah, we are at a 3 right now.
Gotcha.
So Thor, I mean, what do you also look at with what Kwesi has done here in his 3 drafts? And look, we still have to figure out what they have in this class, and JJ McCarthy being the crown jewel. And hey, if you draft a franchise quarterback, I'm not saying all the other picks offset, but it obviously makes life a lot easier when you find and cultivate a top 10 quarterback in the draft. But after that, I mean, it's just been they've had some gigantic misses here. Mekhi Blackman's injury stinks, but Lewis Seen, Ty Chandler, I mean, played 2 snaps yesterday on offense. Ed Ingram is on the verge of being benched. And I love Ivan Pace, but he got even exposed a little bit yesterday. Jordan Addison's been up and down. I mean, has your opinion of Kwesi changed at all with these 8 games that we've seen and just the draft class that he has shown so far? What is your opinion of Kwesi? And has it changed at all basically since the end of the draft?
I wouldn't say that it's changed, no. And I'm not completely there with the Vikings fans that are just, throw the book at him like he's a bad drafter. Like that's just a thing. Like that's a fact. The first draft was a disaster, but there's contextual reasons why it wasn't quite as good, whether you want to give him the benefit of the doubt on those or not. And we have seen improvement the last couple of classes. Addison, I mean, maybe this past game, notwithstanding, but I think he was worth the slot that they got him in. The Blackman injury was unfortunate. Some of those other picks later on in that draft, I didn't quite as much agree with, but you can't say that without giving the other side of it, which is he started to do really well in the UDFA process and extracting essentially value for free. Obviously, pace is a great example of this, but you can miss on some late round picks when you're hitting on the UDFA guys. I obviously adored their first pick this past April as much as I've adored any Vikings pick in a long, long time. I had some qualms about some of the other ones. You know, the Turner one we talked about a little bit. And again, I'm not saying it's a mistake yet. And a couple of the things later on with the last 3 picks, I don't know that I had Michael Juergens ranked on my like 500 board. And then Rouse, here's an example of this. The Vikings, like in the real world, like how some of these decisions manifest. And this isn't even a criticism of the prospect, but the sort of decision-making paradigm. I'd be curious an explanation on this. The Vikings, they obviously do not trust Ty Chandler, right? Speaking of guy who playing time just keeps dissipating. Yeah. And I had talked about this on ESPN Sioux Falls last week about how Aaron Jones, off the injury, he goes into the Detroit game and he played every series except 1 or 2, I forget, but played most of that game when you know that his risk of reoccurrence is higher if you're going to do that. And so this past week, or in the couple days we had in between, what I was most curious about as far as that went is, are you going, if you don't trust Chandler, are you going to get Cam Akers in here as RB2 so you can spell Aaron Jones more so that you increase your odds of having him in December, God willing, into January. And we didn't see that in this past game. I think Aaron Jones, out of 50 offensive snaps against the Rams, I think he took 46. And I think Ty Chandler got 2, if I'm not mistaken. It's fine and if you don't like Ty Chandler, that's fine. I've never been high on Ty Chandler. People can go back and watch the tape on that. I totally get that. But now you gave up draft equity for Cam Akers, who had experience in the system. You have to elevate him there. But going back to the draft thing, you had the first pick in the 6th round. They ended up taking Walter Rouse, and not huge nitpick with it. But if you knew that your running back depth was what it was, and you're counting on a good player, but an injury prone, probably what's a 1-year rental in Aaron Jones, and he's probably going to miss time throughout the season, especially if we don't have any sort of backup that we trust put in. A guy went 6 or 7 picks later that you guys know was one of my favorite players in the class, Kamani Vidal. I wonder, and that's just one example, but sort of looking at it higher in the treetops what I noticed on their videos where they when they put out the draft videos the Vikings did, it's like, oh, inside the war room, whatever. It seemed as though they were fixating on specific dudes and then, sort of rooting for them to fall down the board, maybe without as much regard for the whole treetop picture. So that's one thing with his tendency. It'd be hard to know who he's fixating on in advance, but that might be one thing that I would point out is if you knew your running back depth was or this situation was going to be what it was, why not use one of those late day 3 picks on that? But yeah, I think it's fair to criticize Kwesi, but I wouldn't. There's no referendum that's been written on him yet.
There's also, and this is a different show because it's probably an entire show. There is a deep dive to do on how the Vikings draft, because Kwesi's not making the picks by himself. Like Spielman often, I think, would just be like, I'm taking this guy, right or wrong. Kwesi is an analytics guy who's listening to a bunch of people, i.e. the coordinators, the position coaches, Ryan Grigson. So I wonder if because the consensus or because the room is so filled that they need to come to a consensus, like this is not a normal draft process. This is not Ron Wolf. So I think there's an entire discussion that we don't even know, but I can tell you for sure it's not what you think, which is, what's he doing? Why is he taking this guy and that guy? Michael Juergens, for instance, I think was pushed by Grigson. Grigson loved him. And so then Kwesi's like, okay, he's available. We'll take him there. I want to clear the runway for Thorsday, though, here, because a lot of mistakes on Thursday night, a lot of problems, pretty egregious. But speaking of egregious, start your engines and talk about the officiating on Thursday.
It was a disgrace. And that's probably the nicest way that I can put it. A disgraceful show, and that's the way to view it. The most generous way interpretation to view it. At worst, there's a lot of conspiracy talk out there about it wasn't just the call at the end. It was like every single third down stop. it became, as that game went on, it's like, okay, where's the flag now? Because all these third downs where they stopped them, and some of these penalties were totally phantom. Like that game was a horribly officiated game prior to the last sequence. The what happened at the end in conjunction with that, you have to wonder, are the refs, Trey Blake, it was the lead ref on that game, and then his crew, are they incompetent to the point where they should not be employed? And I'm talking this morning by the NFL, again, all the phantom third down calls. And then the thing at the end, the pool reporter goes up and asks the question to Trey Blake after the game of like, bro, you missed one of the most egregious face mask penalties that we've ever seen. And you were calling all this ticky-tack stuff and some stuff that wasn't even penalties. You were inventing penalties throughout the game. But you missed that on the last, substantive play of the game.
Right.
And Blake said that his view was he was behind the play, so he wouldn't have been able to see the face mask. And then he said the other people were obstructed as well. It's like, bro, you have 7 people on the field, 7 men on that officiating crew.
You can throw the flag, right?
Yes, the people in the nosebleeds could see that. And barring that, again, like let's just say all 7 of those people indeed are incompetent on that thing. We have systems in place to prevent this. That was a scoring play. It turned out that it was a safety. The defender who sacked him knew that he had grabbed the face mask. Anyone that saw the Linda Blair 180, with the head, with that, we all knew that it was face mask, whatever. And the defender like that, you can go to the replay on that, right? I mean, because it's a scoring play. I realize that the face mask itself is not seen as a reviewable play, but you can review the scoring stuff and get the booth involved. I couldn't believe it. I don't know if I ever seen something like that in an NFL game, like where the whole game was weird up until you see one of the worst calls that you'll ever see. There was nothing subjective about this. And again, people in the nosebleeds or anyone watching it.
So are you saying Trey Blake's crew has been questioned before about this or about things?
Yes, I mean they got a history, and with
I just want to make sure that's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, the Vikings, the Colts game was where they last reared their incompetent heads into a game and a bunch of blown calls. And earlier this season, there was the phantom pass interference call as well. Weird stuff tends to follow that officiating crew. A rule needs to be changed because of what happened last night, and there needs to be repercussions for that crew. That crew who is scheduled to work other games. Now you've already wreaked havoc on one key NFC game. And now they're gonna just let them go out and go around it. At minimum, Trey Blake should not officiate one more game this year. It was a disgrace.
I've always found it just so perplexing to me that in all sports, we have like embellishment penalties and we have people that get fined and we have players that, for right or even mostly wrong reasons, get penalized and fined. And yet we don't do the same with the referees. We don't hold them accountable in the same way. And to me, it's just so contradicting. It's incredibly contradicting. And, the NFL has adopted new things, they've changed kickoffs. They've changed some things here and there, but like, how does the UFL like have a sky judge and have someone else to try to figure this stuff out, and the NFL is still like stuck with its referee union? It is very, very, very frustrating because what's probably going to happen, and we saw with the Gophers, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Thor, with the whole kickoff thing that screwed them in Michigan. Like you're going to come out and you're going to change a rule just like they did in the overtime rule with the Vikings and Saints in 2009. Like, you're going to change this rule, but it doesn't change the outcome, and it doesn't change the repercussions of the crew that was on the field. So I'm with Thor, man. Like, that type of stuff, like, if players are going to be punished and reprimanded, you need to do the same to officials.
Umpires in baseball are the same way.
Exactly.
They walk on water.
Yes. Oh, my God.
Yeah, and I think Sidney Rice put this take out, so I'm certain, but he, after the game, he tweeted out, players, we are accountable to the media and the public. After the games, we're asked about every little mistake that we made on the field. And yet the referees are inoculated from it. Right. All we saw of Trey Blake, it was just the quote that the pool reporter put out. Because he got to ask the 2 questions. Judd, I used, for one season, I covered the Twins back in the day, one of their last years in the Metrodome. I know how that pool reporting thing goes. It's like you're knocking on the the door, like it down there in the bowels of the stadium, and one of the refs comes there. They're changing it. Can you bring out Blake? I'm the pool reporter. Just got to ask him a couple questions. But that guy's explanation, it stinks even more than what we saw in the field, that he couldn't see it. And I think at minimum, you will see a rule change off of this. The NFL also needs to come out and say, yeah, I mean, they don't need to say the Vikings got screwed, but that was a face mask penalty.
They'll tell the Vikings though. That's the thing is they'll send the Vikings a letter, but if O'Connell comes out and says we got an apology, he's subject to be fined. That's how this works. So the Vikings will say, because the Vikings will send that clip, the league will say we screwed the pooch. And then the Vikings cannot tell us, hey, they acknowledged it, or else they get fined. That's why, I mean, Dex is right. This whole thing, hockey officiating the same way. The NBA is the only league that sort of has an accountability through that, final 2-minute report. But everybody else basically just says, screw you. So, yeah, I agree completely.
I've slept on this. I'm trying not to overreact, but a disgrace to the game is what we saw last night. And I'm not even saying the Vikings necessarily deserve to win. It was a coin flip type of a thing, but you can't have games like that where the Vikings were not given an opportunity to win because of the officiating.
Forensic CSI Thorsday. I absolutely love this.
I'll run the investigation.
Absolutely love this. Oh yeah, why not?
Yeah,
you should. Okay, let's wrap with your college football game thought, geeking out
junkie
of the week.
Yeah, the game that I'll go to is Texas A&M and LSU. I think is really interesting. Now for the Vikings, it doesn't matter as much the quarterback play there, but people need to start watching Garrett Nussmeier of LSU. Because he is a quarterback who is right now criminally underrated by the public because he came into the season with like lower rankings and some of the people that do the draft rankings aren't watching the games live. And so they're not updating their stuff live. I will be releasing my top 5 early NFL draft position rankings for the skill guys in a week or two on Fantasy Life. Spoiler alert, Nussmeier is going to be prominently included there. Might be a top 3 quarterback on my board. So he's a guy to start watching. And this game where you're playing at Kyle Field in College Station, the Aggies have looked better, since they tripped up against Notre Dame early on in the season. That's a really interesting game. There's going to be interesting trench play there as well. That's something obviously of more topical importance to the Vikings and their draft plans. But that's one. The other one I wanted to toss out just really quick. We mentioned last week in this segment, it's fun watching Florida State get bullied around by everybody, and they indeed got bullied by Duke last week.
Yep.
This week, they go to Miami. They go to Coral Gables to take on by far the best offense in the nation. And speaking of ascending quarterbacks, Cam Ward, I'm probably going to have Cam Ward and Nussmeier right next to each other in my rankings. But that offense that Miami has is ridiculous. They have some other like the defense. It's not elite, of course, but Florida State can't do anything on offense. They have no skill talent. Their offensive line stinks. The quarterback play, they couldn't bench DJU before because as we see now that he's injured, Brock Glenn, the backup, is appreciably worse. So that team's a travesty. Their defense is way down. They have one of the worst pass defenses in the Power 4. Miami is going to run absolute roughshod over that Florida State team. So, that's going to be a fun watch as well.
You know what this show proved? Thursday is any day of the week. It doesn't have to be on Thursday. It really is its own thing. Thorsky, great stuff. Fantastic. Great rant as well. Hopefully, after about a 10-day break, the Vikings can get back on track with the primetime game November 3rd against the Colts. Declan, what do the people need to know?
Hit the like button, subscribe button. We'll have a bonus feedback episode for Sunday, so that'll be posted Sunday morning. You'll find our event line, our hottest takes from the last few days as well. Appreciate everyone supporting and liking Purple Daily. Thursday returns someday next week. Could be a Thursday, could be any day, as Judd says.